Okay, I'm recording now. There you go. I'm gonna put, there you go. So last week then, we talked about this information. We talked about how the course unit is structured, the different communication tools that we're going to be using. We talked about Canvas, we talked about Zoom. We also talked about the relevance of spending time navigating around Canvas and, opening your Zoom account, which I hope most of you have already, entered this room using your Zoom account. That's important. That's how we take attendance. So we do take attendance. So what Zoom does, Zoom records the people that log into the session. It records their names, it records their emails. And that's why it's important that we know that this person was you. So using your university email to log in or create an account in Zoom is important, because when you open this session through your Zoom account, then it's easy to recognize you. It's more difficult to recognize you if you have an email 12364@gmail and we don't know who that person is. We also talked about, the idea of we're going to be using other tools like VoiceThread, Microsoft Teams, but we will introduce them later on in the process, because we want you to get used to the first of all, Canvas, which is a bit different from Blackboard, but I think it's a bit friendlier than Blackboard. I will ask about your experience with Canvas. One of the things to recognize is that Canvas can also be used on your phone. So I do have Canvas on my phone, and I tend to, sometimes just because it's so convenient to check on things in Canvas. Sometimes it enables me as a tutor to edit things. And part of the experience of teaching and learning online is that you get to work with different tools. The exploration of different tools is important. So we will be exposing you to different tools so that you get a sense of how they work, which tools might be better for you in your own teaching context if you were preparing to utilize whatever the learning of this course unit for your future career development. As a student as well in this online course, it is important that you think about which tools are more or easier to use for you and why. So that reflective element is super important. We also talked about online socialization. Peter talked about, the importance of developing an online community, because, if we're doing this online only, then it is important that you have this active engagement. And active engagement is one of the key terms that you read this week in the literature that you explored. And for that online socialization, it is important that the students interact with each other students. That's why we create study groups for the first few weeks, to get people, and give these students a sense of community. And then you go on and create your own groups for your assignment. So again, that socialization bit is super important, and it is part of the experiential learning and approach to this unit. We also talked about teacher presence. Now, the idea of teaching presence is not only related to just the teacher. It is also in relation to the student. So it's that communication between student and tutor, and student and content. It is important that you are engaging with the materials in Canvas and understanding what's happening. There's already, different pages that tell you how the course work, an understanding of what the assessment is, where the discussion groups are. So spending time with the content materials is part of your own learning experience, and nobody else is going to do it for you. So you need to do these things. And we also talked about, video conferencing tools last week. Your experiences of engaging in tools like Zoom, DingTalk, Google Meet, and you name it. How do you behave before in class? What kind of behaviors were probably a bit detrimental to your studies? And what kind of things, based on the literature, you can do to change those behaviors and to adapt, to make those changes in yourself in order to make your own experience more meaningful. We will talk about a bit more about video conferencing tools because we will go through those 3 key readings that you were asked to do. Well, yeah, that was part. So my question is, you don't have to answer that. Have you started building your online social presence? If you have, then that means that you have created a brief biography, that you have put your introduction, you have introduced yourself to the group, to others, to the tutors, and that you have also recognized the importance of utilizing all the features available to you in Zoom. If you're doing this, great, you are on a good track. If you're still not quite there yet, well, we're encouraging you to implement what you have learned last week, today's session, and in the future. Now, we have arranged for you to have a group for weeks 1, well, last week doesn't matter, but from this week onward until week 5, you will be working with 2 or 3 other people. So the idea is, excuse me, that you contact these people through Canvas and that you arrange a moment, a time in which you can meet. This meeting could be online. You could utilize any social media that you use. You could arrange people to see them in Zoom. Now that you have an account in Zoom, you can create your own meetings. And these meetings are, you don't have a limit in terms of time because you're using your university account. If you're using your personal account for Zoom, then you probably have only 40 minutes for those meetings. But again, that's what I was mentioning before about the importance of having your Zoom account through the university email. You could also use, WhatsApp, WeChat, whatever other online tools that you find available to you in order to meet these people. And the idea is that you get together, you get to know each other a bit more, and then that you start working on the group work that we have prepared for you this week, week 2. So if you want to know who is in your group, this Google slide has a link. I think you should be able to access to this slide. I'm gonna go on into Canvas, week 2. Yes, should be available to you. So you can have access to these slides in Canvas, and you can have access to that link for to access to your study group. So if you click there, or if you go into modules as well and go into week 2 discussion group 1.71, you also have a link there just to know who is in your group. So that's that. And I'm gonna check there you go. Yo-Yo, thank you very much. I forgot you were here, Yo-Yo. Just shout out and say, hi, I'm here. Right. Thank you, Yo-Yo, for sharing that link to Canvas for your profile information. So that's where we are so far. That's a bit of homework for you to do at the end of the session. It is a bit disruptive if you start contacting people because the more we try to multitask, we get distracted about what we're actually concentrating on. But today we're going to talk about the dimension of reflection of this unit, writing reflectively for this course unit. Part 2 of video conferencing systems, your experiences of teaching and learning online. Could be this experience that you're starting or past experiences. And then we go into group work. And then homework and what you need to do for next week to prepare for this session. The same aims and learning outcomes that we discussed in week 1. You can look into that in more details. But again, we're still getting to know the course unit, identifying those critical aspects of the unit. What are the appropriate behaviors and skills needed to engage in online learning, and the idea of reflection. So I want to tell me in the chat box, what is reflection, or what do you know about reflection? What do you think reflection is? I'll give you a minute and we'll check your answers in a minute. So it's thinking time and answering time. We have some responses now. I have one direct message as well. Yes, so people are saying reflection is thinking retrospectively to analyze an event or a situation. I like that. I can sense that you diligently looked at the video recordings as well, because you're using that vocabulary, and we can tell when students start using vocabulary that we put in the materials, oh, they're reading. That's good. It might be from your experience. Do you want to say anything else about this, Olga? What's your experience with reflection?
I thought it was easy, but then it turned out that because I was like mainly descriptive in the first, then I tried to make it evaluative. I mean, it's not easy actually to write reflection and to think back, analyze. Sometimes I went into more details, and no need for that so much.
Yes, but one thing I can say is that when we go into the details, is because sometimes we need them to be there to then move on to the next page. And what I like about writing reflectively is that you can go back and edit and redraft and say, do I need everything there? Maybe I can be more concise, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also part of the writing process. So sometimes students start writing very descriptively. Mm-hmm. And then as they move on into the writing process and they start adding more information, they go, oh, let me go back, let me do some editing, let me be more precise, more concise, and putting themselves in the position of the reader. Well, is the reader understanding everything I'm saying? But it is a good starting point, definitely, being descriptive as well. Any other thoughts? Anyone else? How about you, Yo-Yo? What's your experience in reflection?
The reflection as a way to make myself progress, especially for teachers who are at the early stage in their career. So it's important they keep growing up. Sometimes they can keep reflection about their teaching, but it can be anything like young teachers' communication with their tutors and how they are working with their colleagues. The reflection can be in any forms, not necessarily just write some diary. Because after we finish a whole day's teaching, sometimes we feel we don't have more brain to give a diary. But it can just be a photo. I took a photo about what I teach today, or maybe I took a photo about my slides and about the classroom. And after a few months later, when I look back, I found I am growing up. I am teaching better. So So it's important to keep reflecting, not necessarily to force oneself to write something serious, but just do it.
Well, I think one of the important things you're touching upon is that to reflect, we need kind of some data. So you need kind of to have something in mind. So you're talking about mental pictures, you're talking about real pictures, paintings, an image, it could be a meme, it could be something that, reminds you. And that's a good starting point, always. I think visuals are, a new way of, eliciting more information and go deeper. What we want in, sorry, are you saying something? I just didn't catch up.
I'm sorry. I was saying not necessarily write a long paragraph. It can be just 1, 2 sentences.
Well, again, yes, that is a good starting point. But if we really want to be deeper, reflection goes beyond an image only, two sentences. It goes beyond that. And that's what we're trying to do in this course unit, helping you to reflect on your experiences of online learning, but also asking you to connect your learning with the theory, for instance, the literature that you are engaging with. And for that, then we do kind of need to see, longer sentences, a bit good paragraph, concise paragraphs about what you're learning. But yes, as I said, it is a good starting point if you start with a picture, with a meme, with an image, with an audio. You can talk to, send audios to yourself about what you have learned so far, and then you can build on that. And that is the idea about reflection. But I like that you start, it doesn't have to be writing, it could be an image, it could also be, as a starting point, it could also be an audio. But always the idea of pushing
Keep doing it.
Say again?
Just do it.
Yes, do it. And going beyond, being more analytical. I think that is where we're trying to get to. And we have more responses in our chat box. We go into using the new things, discoveries, to look backwards. I have learned what you have learned before. I like that. It's the idea of retrospective is very interesting. Although the literature on reflection does not talk only about retrospective learning, it talks about current learning, it talks about the present, it talks about past, and it talks about future as well. We will touch upon these ideas in a minute, and I'd like to read the last message here. Reflection is evaluation, okay, conclusion of past and adjustment and change. Oh, I like that. Change for the present based on past experiences. Okay, you are now going a bit deeper and deeper. Let's continue and see what reflective writing is then. What is reflective writing in an academic context? I kind of mentioned some things now, so we're going to jump directly there. Get to see more about how we understand reflection in this unit and academically as well, because this is informed, through the literature. So reflection is evidence of deep learning. Reflection is a form of response to your personal experiences, as you mentioned in the chat box, Olga, situations, events that are important to you, or new information. So you are looking at the information, you're analyzing the information. I think everybody is right in saying this is a way of analyzing experience, but also learning from experience. The idea of reflecting is because we want to become more aware of what we are learning and how we want to utilize that learning for future experiences. So it is a processing phase where thinking and learning take place. And what I think it was Hugh said, it is about establishing those connections between present, past, and future. So how your current learning is informing your future experiences, and how your past experiences are informing your current learning, that they also will inform your future experiences. It's about connecting past, present, and then future. A lot of you already have experiences of learning online and teaching online. And the idea is that as you read the literature, then you think about those experiences in the past and you make adjustments changes, somebody talked about changes for these new experience of online learning as well. Reflective thinking involves looking back at an event, okay, that is part of it, analyzing and thinking carefully about the implications for our future development. So when we talk about reflection, then we understand that it is a cognitive, personal process. Again, the idea of asking you to keep a reflective journal is because you do have, at the end of the day, to write an assignment and keeping track of what you have learned in the past, keeping a record of everything you're learning in week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and so on. It is so much easier as you have a record, you're documenting your learning, to then get at the end of week 12 and then think, okay, I need to write an assignment. Let me see my reflections and then build on them. You already have you're halfway there if you keep your reflective journal, if you keep documenting your learning process. So that's the idea, that the relevance of initiating your reflective process. As you just said, it could be an audio, it could be an image, but do build on that. The idea is that you start writing reflectively, because at the end of the day, the assignment is, we want to see your reflective writing, not only descriptive, but go deep inside your learning process. And for that, we need to make connections, links back to the literature. So if you were talking about, the relevance of group work, or you are individually reflecting of your experiences of group work, then the idea is that you not only talk about that personal experience in this course, but also make those connections with the literature that you read in group work, that you analyze that information and say, so what did we do well? And how do I link this with the literature? What could we have done better? What does the literature suggest? So you're making those connections. Therefore, the idea of going beyond that descriptive element and start kind of theorizing your experiences, showing that you have learned not only from experience itself, but also from that theory or literatures that we will be covering on a weekly basis. A reflective assignment shows tutors how your learning is developing. So you can explain what, why, and how you're learning in that reflective assignment, in your reflective journal, in your reflective posts that we always have in Canvas as well. The idea is that you tell us not only the what happened, tell us why do you think thing happened, and how does that experience connect back to the literature. I am going to just open this bit here. Oh, this was homework for this week. So the idea was that you read one of these 3 articles, and that you think about those articles and relate them to your experiences. And then you were asked to post a comment. So connecting your experience with your reading. And I could see some people even, adding some of, references in their text. I could see how people were connecting. Yo-Yo is very diligently responding to everybody's comments. The idea as well is that you go back to what you wrote and see what we responded to you, because this is a two-way interaction as well. And, people quoting what they read and related it to their experiences is also part of the process. And that's why it's important then, when you write these reflective contributions, you do that as part of your own developing process of writing reflectively, that you make those connections to what you read and what your experience is, and also tell us how you will utilize that learning in the future, how you will apply it in the future. And the future is not about, far away. It could be tomorrow. How am I going to make sure that after I read about, the use of video in class, how am I going to make sure that I am engaging actively through this video conferencing tool? What kind of things can I do to make my own learning experience better? And you can post that in every single reflective discussion that we put in Canvas or VoiceThread or Microsoft Teams. It is a way of helping you to develop those reflective skills and asking you to write reflectively. So somebody asked one time in this unit, are there any connections between reflective thinking and critical thinking? Of course, there's always a connection. So reflective thinking starts with you revisit experience, you examine your attitudes, your behaviors, your beliefs, your values. But then if you want to make that reflection more critical, this is when you start making connections back to literature. So you go beyond, you start engaging with your critical thinking by justifying your actions based on the literature, for instance, or solving problems, suggesting change and how the literature is informing your decisions about changing. So yes, reflective thinking and critical thinking are part of the same, process, and going very deep into that process of reflection is important as well. So we have this bit that says, it is important to evaluate and analyze your learning to show a deeper reflection that is required at a university level. So I always remind students, you are university students, and therefore showing a deep understanding of experience and the literature is important. So for example, you may explore changing values or beliefs, or analyze the idea of different experts in your field in relation to your experiences. Again, connections to literature, connections to research-based theory as well is important. Somebody already mentioned this. So to show the tutors that you are learning, we need to clearly see where your mind was in week 1, in week, 4, and week 7, 8, and at the end. So we need to kind of see that process, learning process and progress. That's why, as you think about and analyze your skills, your knowledge, your attitudes, your values, it's important that you are showing that process to show where you started, where you're now, and where you're going. And we always think, those reflective assignments that are very, very good show that process, past, present, and future, because you can always tell us how you're going to utilize everything that you learned in your future practice as a future online learner. Now, somebody has asked as well, what kind of language can I use in my reflective writing? Personal, that is the right way of saying. If this is about your experience, we need to see that you're talking about yourself, I. So saying I is fine, it is good. I find it a bit strange when I read the author. So thinking, who is the author? Why are people disconnecting themselves from what they write? So take, charge of your own learning process and speak about yourself. So I would like you, for your assignment, to use, personal pronouns. You can use I, and I'm expecting to see I instead of the author of this paper. I'm like, who's the author of this paper? Yeah. That's another picture there. So what does reflective writing look like? I mean, there's no specific structure about this, but you can structure your reflective writing based on theories of reflection, based on the processes of reflecting that have, people have written about for a long, long time, from Dewey, from, Shun. We'll see some reflective models that can help you think about how you can structure your reflective journal. So we talked about the importance of keeping a journal, and the idea of showing you these different reflective models is to help you structure that journal. You could choose a model, you could create your own model based on the models, based on literature, or previous models of reflection, to help yourself to write more coherently, more fluent, and show exactly your process of reflection. So there's a model that Kolb created. This is a person very, very knowledgeable about education, and talks about different stages. So simply put, you start with a concrete experience. And this is where we can start writing descriptively. Tell us what happened. Yeah. So you can tell us what happened, who was there, when, where, those questions about, explaining the situation. But then you have to move beyond that and tell us more about reflective observations. So tell us what you did, what you experienced, how you felt, any consequences of your own attitudes, behaviors that you can analyze. So you have some questions to think about to go beyond the descriptive. But we're still answering the question, what? Now, we get more reflective when we start answering questions such as how and why. So then we need to move to the next stage called abstract conceptualization, and then start connecting to theory. Oh, let me read some literature on the topic. What can that literature teach me about my experience? Or how can I understand my experience in light of that theory? So you're going to, why did this happen? You're kind of speculating about why things happen based on information that is theoretical or research-based. And finally, you move to active experimentation. So active experimentation. This is a stage where we are encouraged to think about what you will do next. Again, future. What will you do next in the future based on the experience, based on your learning from the literature? What can you do next? What would you like to do next? Click. We have another model, and you can see similarities, but this one has not 4 stages, it has 6. Now it's breaking it down more. But if you look at the questions around, they're very similar. So this Gibbs model starts with a description, what happened, feelings, tell me what you were thinking and feeling. And then you start with the reflective bit, evaluation. What was good and bad about the event? You go deeper. What sense can you make of the event? Now, what this model doesn't include is the theoretical element, which I will probably, if I were to use this model, I would definitely add some connections to the literature in the part of analysis. And then what else could you have done? Your conclusion. But also it's asking you for an action plan. So what might you do to improve a similar event if this happens again? So if you get to then, you become an online teacher, how all this experience of this course is going to help you to shape your future teaching, for example. We have this model of reflection, which is informed by Schoen's work. This model is a model that came up out of my own research when I did my PhD. And I noticed that people go through different, especially people, the people I interviewed were Mexican people, we speak Spanish. And I noticed that people went through different stages of thinking process. These stages, especially stage of appreciation, action, and reappreciation, are the stages that Schoen in his work of reflective practice talks about. But then I added stage 1, unique situation, and future action, because people do talk about, what they learn and how they're going to implement that learning. So you start again describing a situation, tell us what happened. You then continue to stage 2 of creating an initial understanding of the situation in light of theory or more experience. Then you think about what or how do you deal with that situation? So what do you do? The stage of action again is telling us about what happened. What do you do? What happened? What do you do? And why? Again, if we want to be more critical and reflective, it is about telling us why and how. And this is a stage we can do that. After making connections to literature, talking about what happened, why things happen, we move into a reappreciation stage, which is, okay, so what do you learn about all this experience and how you're going to use that learning in the future? That's a simpler explanation of this model, but it follows previous models as well. So again, they're very, very similar. And the idea of critical thinking, and if we link critical thinking with write reflectively, as I mentioned before, so we start describing a situation, what, when, who, where, for instance. Then we start moving to the analytical section of answering questions, why and how, and then evaluating that situation by thinking about the future. So in a way, these 3-part critical thinking skills that Cottrell talks about in his work kind of summarize that idea of reflective writing. And you could utilize this reflective modes, reflective models to structure your reflective writing. So I'll give you an example that Muhan and Webb show. So they say, okay, you can start describing, telling us what's going to be examined, a little bit of interpretation, so tell us why this situation is interesting, important to you, or useful to reflect on. Tell us how you can explain this situation based on theory or any literature on the topic. How similar or different this experience is from others, and those others could be, again, literature that you read. And tell us, give us an outcome. So what do you learn, and what does this mean for you in the future? Summarizing then the idea of reflective writing, we can learn that reflective writing is purposeful. So you're not just writing because of the sake of writing it. You're writing because your purpose is showing the tutor that you have learned something. It needs to have evidence of reflective thinking. And those evidence, the reflective thinking is kind of responding to those questions that we mentioned before. What, why, how. so what? So for the assignment, we will ask you to evidence your learning. And a way of evidencing your learning is about, putting a quotation, quoting yourself from your reflective journal. That's why it's important to keep it. So you can say, this is what I thought in week 1. Quotation, but not only leave the quotation there, tell us more about it. You need to explain to us why you're using this evidence. Yeah. Links to theory, or utilizing analytical frames to go deeper into the information, evaluating your own skills, attitudes, insights, and again, tell us how these ideas are, encouraging you to change or rethink about your own processes of, reflecting, but also your own future experiences. We'll take a break, but before we go into a break, and I'll stop the recording now, I'd like to see if anyone has a question about this, because I think this is the only time when we talk about reflection and being reflective and writing reflectively. But you will be asked to be reflective through different online discussions and forums that we create. But yeah, it's important to get back to you. Where are you at in this first part of the session?